Hey everybody, welcome to the Leek. I'm John as always, and it's that time again. It's set review time. The set review, or the set spoiler, came out a day early, which took me completely by surprise. I had very different plans today, but now my plans are recording set review. So today we're going to go over every single white card in the set. Just a few quick disclaimers before we jump in. Number one, this is a limited set review. I'm talking about draft and sealed only. The cards may be amazing in Brawl, they may be amazing in Canlander, whatever. I don't care. This video is about draft and sealed only. Keep that in mind. Number two, I have not played with most of these cards. Unless they're a reprint, I've never played them. So these are my first glance opinions on them. These are how I'm going to approach the format when I go to pre-release next weekend, when I start drafting it, etc. My feelings may change over time, but this is how I view these cards and how I'm going to approach them when I first play this set. Finally, of course, these are my opinions. I do set reviews not to tell you the truth and tell you what the cards are. I do them to encourage discussion with me, amongst yourselves, etc. So if you disagree with something, if you think the card is amazing or terrible, let me know. Talk with other people in the comments down below. That is what these videos are for. Magic should be a discussion, not me telling you what is true. Anyways, with that out of the way, we're going to jump into the white set review. Up first, we have Adamant Will. Adamant Will is 1 and a white for an instant at common. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains indestructible until end of turn. This is a fine combat trick. It's nothing too exciting, although indestructible is nice because it doesn't matter if you're boosting the toughness outside of trade damage because it's going to survive anyways. But it is still just a pretty generic white combat trick. You're going to play it if you have a spot, and if you don't, you're not going to feel that bad about cutting it. So that is the definition of a C for me. So C for Adamant Will. Up next is Aven Sentry. Aven Sentry is 3 and a white for a creature bird soldier at common. It's a 3/2 with flying, and that's it. It is a French vanilla flyer. And it's a totally fine filler card. Flying puts this ever so slightly higher than it would be if it was a 3/2 for 4, which actually would be pretty bad. But I'm not going to go as high as a C+ on this. It's still not amazing. It's just a card that you'll play if you've got a spot. If you don't have a spot for this, you probably cut it, but I think cutting this is pretty rare. But it's just not quite good enough to get to that C+. So it is a high C. It is a high C, meaning that you should pick this kind of mid-pack at the earliest and play it a good amount of the time. Up next is Baird, Steward of Argive. Argive. Let's go with Argive. 2 white for a legendary creature human soldier at uncommon. He's a 2/4. He's got vigilance. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 generic mana for each of those creatures. This is our first legendary creature. Legendary is not a mechanic exactly of this set, but it's a huge theme of this set. There's a lot of legendary creatures and planeswalkers and artifacts and enchantments and legendary sorceries, which we'll see as well. Legendary matters, and some decks will want to have a pretty sizable amount of legendary cards. Luckily, a lot of them are at uncommon. So anyways, Baird, Steward of Argive. It's going to be a real pain. It's not Ghostly Prison level of pain. You do have to pay 1 mana instead of 2 to attack, and this being a legendary creature means that you're not going to have 2 Bairds on the battlefield, or 3 or 4, you're only going to ever have 1, so it doesn't stack. Also, being a creature is a bit easier to kill than Ghostly Prison ever was, or any effects like that. Still, it's a 2/4, so it is going to be annoying to attack through, and having to pay for the privilege to attack into it will suck in a lot of games. I think I take this relatively highly, though I'm not sure it's ever going to be in first pick territory in most packs. I've got Baird at a B-. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be annoying to play against, but it's not going to be remotely as back-breaking as some of these effects have been in the past. So B- for Baird, Steward of Argive. Up next is Banalish Honor Guard. Banalish Honor Guard is 1 and a white for a creature, human knight at common. They're a 2/2. Banalish Honor Guard gets +1/+0 for each legendary creature you control. You see, legends matter. So this is something we're going to talk about a lot. Grizzly bears are dead. The 2/2 for 2 is dead. It is gone. A 2/2 for 2 is actually pretty bad these days because there are so many bears with upsides. 2 power, 2 toughness, 2 mana creatures that have extra stuff going on. We're going to see several before we're done this video today. But anyways, historically 2/2s for 2 have been Cs. 2/2s with an upside for 2 have been C pluses. At some point, we're going to have to change that metric. This is going to have to go down to a C at some point, but not today. I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to hope that the day of the grizzly bear is not truly over yet for good and keep this at a C+. It's just, it's a 2/2 for 2, which is playable, and if you happen to have a bunch of legendary creatures, giving them all a power toughness is pretty decent. So C+ for Banalish Honor Guard, and pour one out for grizzly bears. Up next is Banalish Marshal. Banalish Marshal is white, white, white for a creature human knight at rare. This is part of a cycle. It's a 3/3, and other creatures you control get +1/+1. If you can pull off a mono white deck, this is nuts. Non-legendary Kong Ming for 1 less mana, just totally sold on it. If you're not heavy white, though, this is going to be hard to cast. If you're an 8/8 or a 9/8 split, you need to be a little bit careful on playing this. It may very well end up being a turn 6, 7, 8, 9 play, or you could just never hit that third white land, especially if white is your secondary color. But if mono white can be a thing, I'd be okay taking this pretty early and diving deep into it. I'm going to put it at a B-, but in some decks, this just drops to almost unplayable due to that cost. And then in other decks, this is just an all-star. So B- with Banalish Marshal. I'm hesitant about first picking it just because that's such a demand of what your deck needs to look like and be color-wise. So we'll keep Banalish Marshal at a B-, but it can go either way depending on your deck, of course. Up next is Blessed Light. Blessed Light is 4 and a white for an instant at common, exile target creature or enchantment. It's unconditional instant speed removal. It's totally fine. It's 5 mana, but this format looks like it's going to be slow, and I've been saying this for years now. Please let it be slow. Yeah, this is just great. 5 mana doesn't make it exactly premium level removal. It's not Doomblade or anything, but it still makes it an include of as at least a 1 of, possibly 2 of, and you do take it relatively high. Exile's a good bonus because there is some recursion a little bit in this format, and hitting enchantments is also pretty decent. You get to kill some sagas, which we'll talk about shortly. Yeah, Blessed Light looks great. I've got it at a B-. It's just below premium removal purely because of the cost. Up next is Board the Weatherlight. Board the Weatherlight is 1 and a white for a sorcery at uncommon. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historic card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Historic cards are a theme of this set as well. Historic is any artifact. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a crappy little sword that some pirate had. Doesn't matter if it was Karn himself. It's a historic card. Any legendary card is a historic card, so that's planeswalkers, legendary creatures, etc. And sagas are historic. We'll talk about sagas in just a little bit. So for 2 mana, at sorcery speed, you get to dig through your top 5 cards and find one of those types of cards. Not being able to hit a land generally makes this worse than something like Commune with Dinosaurs or whatnot. Frequently, when you play a card like this, you're playing it to find a land or to find some other specific type of card, and that versatility means that it can be good early and it can be good late. This missing on the land, I guess unless you're hitting a legendary land or an artifact land, which doesn't really have any bearing on this set, it just makes this a bit worse. If you have a lot of historic stuff, and there's definitely artifact decks in this format, there's definitely Legend Matters decks in this format, but unless you have that, unless you're very specifically one of those decks, I just think this is a really low pick. I've got it around C-. I don't think I really want to be playing this unless I have fantastic reasons for it. So C- for Board the Weatherlight. Up next is Call the Cavalry. Call the Cavalry is 3 and a white for a sorcery at a common. Create 2 2/2 white knight creature tokens with vigilance. Yeah, it's 4/4 for 4 across 2 bodies with vigilance. That's fine. Sorcery speed sucks a little bit. You're not surprising anybody in combat with this, but if you're going wide, if knights matter, which they might, we'll see a few cards where that matters, here you go. It's a C that goes up slightly in some decks to like a C+, and in other decks, it's just a C. Play it, cut it, your choice. C for Call the Cavalry. Up next is Charge, a card name that apparently wasn't already used. Charge is a single white mana for an instant at common. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. It's as cheap as a Trumpet Blast effect can get. It's about as plain as a Trumpet Blast effect can get. I guess you could have +1/+0. Yeah, it's a card that you want to play if you are in a go wide deck, and if you're not, you don't. The single white mana is terrifying because you will just die out of nowhere to this. And the fact that it will be a late pick common means your opponent could have 2 white and suddenly charge, and the dreaded third charge. Yeah, I think this is fine if you are in the go wide deck, and if you're not, you do not absolutely play it ever. So kind of like a C-, and that's really sort of informing the pick order of this. You do pick it rather late. Even if you are in the deck that desperately wants this, you still can probably just wheel it. So C-, if you go wide, you'll be happy with it, and if you're not, you don't play it. Up next is Davenant Trapper. Davenant Trapper is 2 and a white for a creature human archer at common. She's a 3/2. Whenever you cast a historic spell, tap target creature an opponent controls. It's a 3/2 for 3, which is okay. I prefer it over a 2/3 for 3, but it's very filler level at that. The fact that you can tap something down maybe a few times, like even if you're the artifact deck or the Legends Matter deck, I'm not positive how many times you're triggering this, so it's just kind of like a little bit of extra value. I don't think you play this and go, aha, I'm tapping something every single turn forever, or multiple things. I don't expect that's going to happen. So I've got this at a C. I think it's just filler level. I think you can cut it and feel totally okay about it, and if you are pretty heavy on historic cards, it'll feel a little bit better, but even then not by much. So just a straight C for Davenant Trapper. Up next is Danitha Capuchin Paragon. Danitha is 2 and a white for a legendary creature human knight at uncommon. She's a 2/2 with first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. Also, aura and equipment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Yeah, Danitha is pretty darn good. She's a 2/2 with 3 French vanilla abilities for 3 mana. That's really good. First strike, very relevant. Lifelink, very relevant. Vigilance, very relevant on a first striker because you can attack in and your opponent's 2/2s can't do anything. And then your opponent's 2/2s can't attack in themselves. This is a high pick. I think it's a first pick if the pack is real bad. It is still just a 2/2. You're not just winning a game because you played this or anything. The cost reduction's cute, but I'm not sure it'll be enough. The problem with auras, there are some decent auras in this set, but none of them really kind of transcend the aura problem of getting 2 for 1 if you try to play them. And the equipment is fine. There's a couple of decent ones, but it doesn't reduce the equip cost, which means you're still paying full price for that. Still, she's a solid B-. She's only missing out because she's not anything higher than a 2/2. So B- for Danitha Capuchin. Love the French vanilla card, or our rules text rather. Don't really care about the aura or equipment cost reduction. Up next is Daring Archaeologist. Daring Archaeologist is 3 and a white for a creature human artificer at rare. It's a 3/3. When Daring Archaeologist enters the battlefield, you may return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Whenever you cast a historic spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Daring Archaeologist. Now this is a huge difference from Davenant Trapper. This, if you cast any historic spell, suddenly Archaeologist is a 4/4. And then a 5/5, and then a 6/6. That is a very, very, very big game. Daring Archaeologist seems fine enough. A 3/3 for 4 is slightly overcosted, but it's fine. Getting the artifact back is cool if it happened. I don't think you hold on to this waiting for that to happen, though. It's just a nice upside if it happens to be there. And then, yeah, if you have a lot of historic stuff, and there are a lot of artifacts in this set, something like 30, 35 artifacts, there's all the legendary creatures, which white decks do care about slightly more than other ones. Yeah, Daring Archaeologist seems like a solid first pick. It's not a bomb. It obviously takes other cards and time to get up to kind of a really good level. So I'm not going to go any higher than a B- on it, but it's a good card. B- for Daring Archaeologist. Up next is Dauntless Bodyguard. Dauntless Bodyguard is a single white mana for a creature human knight at uncommon. It's a 2/1 for 1 mana. As Dauntless Bodyguard enters the battlefield, choose another creature you control. Sacrifice Dauntless Bodyguard. The chosen creature gains indestructible until end of turn. It's interesting. It's a really cool design. It's a 2/1 for 1, which is something that I actually really like in white weenie decks. And we've already seen, +1/+1 to your team, +1/+1 to your attackers. And 2/1s go straight into that deck. But on turn 1, this card is only a 2/1. Everything else printed on this card doesn't matter. Technically, you could still sack it, but it wouldn't do anything. On later turns, though, if you do top deck this, and they're usually not that good to top deck a 2/1 for 1, you can have it protect your bomb instead. It's just kind of insurance that sits on the table. It's a cool card. It works great on turn 1, and it works pretty good on other turns as well. I don't think it's a super high pick. I think it's a C+ that you just always play, but you don't go crazy on picking this. It's a very, very middle of the pack pick. So C+ for Dauntless Bodyguard. Up next is Dub. Another simple worded card that apparently was never used before. Dub is 2 and a white for enchantment aura at common. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2, has first strike, and is a knight in addition to its other types. Remember, knights are going to matter for a couple of cards here. 3 mana for +2/+2 and first strike. Not super sold on that. The potential tribal synergies of knights, not super sold on spending an entire card on this. Remember, the big problem with auras is that you get 2 for 1. I pay, let's say, 3 mana for a creature, and then I play 3 mana for this. I put 6 mana into a creature, and my opponent kills it with, a 2 mana, 3 mana spell, or a 2 mana, 3 mana creature, or 2 mana creature and a combat trick. So I got 2 for 1. Actually, no, if they use a combat trick, I got 2 for 2. But you get 2 for 1 a lot, and you can even get it just ripped out from underneath you. I can play this on a 2/2, and my opponent shocks it. Deals 2 damage to it, the enchantment just goes away. That's the big, big, big problem with enchantments. And this enchantment doesn't transcend that problem. The enchantments that transcend that problem are ones that draw you cards, the ones that come back to your hand when they go away, like Rancor, which is insanely good, and the ones that also create stuff when they come in, counters or creature tokens or etc. This does none of that. And so I've got this at a C-. I don't think you play it very often. I think you cut it very regularly. Don't play auras like crazy. It's not good. C- for Dub. Up next is Evra, Halcyon Witness. Evra is 4 white for a legendary creature avatar at rare. It's a 4/4. It has lifelink. You can pay 4 to exchange your life total with Evra, Halcyon Witness's power. This is going to be dumb. This is going to be really dumb. In Christmas Land, where it turned 7, I've taken no damage. And I get to swing in with a 20 power, 4 toughness, life-linking angel. And I get to gain 20 life. And go up to 24, because I briefly went to 4 life there. And if the game didn't just end by my opponent getting hit but for 20, then I don't even know. Still, this is very gambly for my blood. Having to go to 4 life and potentially have this die without connecting. Your opponent plays, Gideon's Reproach or something that we'll see shortly. Is going to feel real bad. I'll have to see how this plays. But I kind of want to see someone else play it first. I don't want to be the guinea pig here. I'm going to start at a low B-, because come on, it's still a 4/4 flying lifelinker for 6. Like, that's not a bad fail case, even if you never activate it. But there's going to be games where you're suddenly just dead, because this is one of the biggest creatures you've ever seen on a battlefield in Limited. So B- for Evra. It's a little gambly, but even the fail case is good. So B-. And actually, I think I even just talked myself up to a B, because that fail case is just fine. So B for Evra, Halcyon Witness. Up next is Excavation Elephant. Excavation Elephant is 4 and a white for a creature elephant at common. It's a 3/5. It's got kicker for 1 and a white. That means that when you cast this, you can increase the cost by 1 and a white. So you can make it 5 white. And if you do, when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. No. Just no. This card's not that good. Cut it in basically every case other than you desperately need a creature. A 3/5 for 5 is not playable, really. And the kicked version, it's so narrow that I just don't care about it. It's a C-. I think you cut this very, very regularly. If you're playing it, it means your draft didn't go the best. C- for excavation elephant. Up next is Fall of the Thrawn. Fall of the Thrawn. I guess it's Thran, isn't it? Fall of the Thran. Fall of the Thran is 5 and a white for an enchantment saga at rare. So sagas are an enchantment that sits on the battlefield just like all other enchantments, and when you play it, you put a lore counter on it and you activate the first act. Then next turn after your draw step, meaning at the beginning of your main phase, you put another lore counter and activate Act 2, and then the third lore counter the following turn activates Act 3, and then the enchantment is destroyed. So it's a spell that sort of does 3 different things, or in some case a couple of things are the same, over the course of 2 turns, and then goes away. So Fall of the Thrawn, immediately you put a lore counter on it, and you destroy all lands. So 6 mana, Armageddon, all lands are destroyed. And then next turn, Act 2, each player returns 2 land cards from their graveyard to the battlefield, and then Act 3, they do it again, and then you sacrifice the saga. The sagas are interesting. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them are really flash in the pan. They are, here's an effect, and you better make use of it the single turn that it happens. We'll talk about that when they come up. This one I don't really like. The whole Armageddon plan, when you're drafting a set that has Armageddon in it, is to be white weenie. Preferably mono white. You drop 1-drops and 2-drops and 3-drops maybe, but 1-drops, 2-drops. You play Armageddon, your opponent has all their lands gone, your lands are gone, and as long as you get like 1 land back, or maybe 2 lands back, you're still going to be able to play most of your deck. That is not really gonna happen in this set, certainly not for 6 mana for this Armageddon. Plus, the big problem here is how rapidly everybody rebuilds from this. I play this and then pass the turn and my opponent puts down a land. Back to my turn, my opponent puts 2 more lands from the graveyard to the battlefield. My opponent has 3 lands the turn after I cast Armageddon, an expensive version of Armageddon. That's not okay. That's not worth it. That's not good. Fall of the Thran feels really bad to me. I'm going to pass it forever until I see someone actually pull something off with it, but as far as I'm concerned, this card's not playable. So F for Fall of the Thran. Up next is Gideon's Reproach, a card I just mentioned. Gideon's Reproach is 1 and a white for an instant at common. Gideon's Reproach deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. It's back. It was in, I believe, Battle for Zendikar, maybe it was Oath of the Gatewatch, and it was just fine there, and I think it's going to be just fine here. Blows up your opponent's Evra, Halcyon Witness. It's not premium removal because it is only dealing 4 damage. It's only in combat, which happens. Creatures attack and block quite a bit, but it's just not really first pickable exactly. But if you're white, you'll be pretty happy with one of these. You'll be pretty happy with the second one of these usually. 2 mana to kill an awful lot of the format is quite fine. So B- for Gideon's Reproach. Up next is Healing Grace. Healing Grace is a single white mana for an instant at common. Prevent the next 3 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn by a source of your choice. You gain 3 life. No. Just no. Don't play Fog, which is stop all combat damage for the turn. Don't play an extremely narrow Fog that only prevents 3 damage, even if it does gain you 3 life. This card's an F-. You literally should never, ever have this in your deck. Ever. It just doesn't do anything. Life is a resource. Use it. F- for Healing Grace. Up next is History of Benaglio, another saga. 1 white for a mythic enchantment saga. Act 1 and Act 2, you create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. Act 3, knights you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. And here's my problem with a lot of the sagas. The Act 3 is frequently a 1-turn effect that you're telling your opponent is going to happen 2 turns early. So I'm playing a white deck and I've got my creatures out and some of them are knights, and I play this card and I say, hey, opponent, in 2 turns, I'm going to give my team +2/+1 and attack you. Please don't screw that up, okay? But this card's going to sit here reminding you nonstop for the next 2 turns that that's going to happen. And that feels iffy to me. Yes, there's going to be a ton of games where your opponent can't stop that. They can't play enough creatures to stem the tide of a bunch of +2/+1 knights coming at them. but there are going to be situations where your opponent suddenly knows what's going to happen and can screw up your plans. Luckily, this saga is just a really good saga. It's 3 mana for 2/2/2 knights, and then hopefully a bunch of damage being dealt. This one's just good. It's a first pick card. It's very, very solid. I think it's a straight B. I don't think it's any better, but man, we're going to see this with some lower powered sagas later. I'm not a big fan of the telling your opponent what's going to happen in 2 turns and hoping that it just works. I like my sagas to leave permanent stuff behind, and luckily this one does. So, solid B. I think you do first pick it. I think it is a good saga, even if that 1 turn thing might not work out for you. So, B for History of Benaglio. Up next is Invoke the Divine. Invoke the Divine is 2 and a white for an instant at common. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. You'd gain 4 life. Pure sideboard. Nothing else to say about this. You never, ever, ever main deck this. Yeah, there's some enchantments. Yeah, there's some sagas, but you don't main deck it ever. It's a D. If you see an enchantment that's a real problem, sure, throw it in. Why not? It's 3 mana instant speed. That's about as good as you can get. Cheaper's better always, but it's fine. It's a straight D. Up next is Knight of Grace. Knight of Grace is 1 and a white for a creature human knight at uncommon. It's a 2/2 with first strike. It's got hexproof from black, which is something we haven't seen before. So hexproof now has subsets. So this is hexproof from black, meaning that black spells and abilities can't target this. But it's not protection, so black creatures can block it. Black creatures can do combat damage to it, things like that. I kind of like this new version of hexproof, and I would like to see this be how the game goes. I'm not sold on blanket hexproof continuing to be a thing. In addition, Knight of Grace gets +1/+0 as long as any player, you or your opponent, controls a black permanent. So it's a 2/2 for 2 with first strike. That's insane. Again, Grizzly Bears, you are out of a job. You're worthless. You're garbage. Randomly making this a 3/2 if you're white-black or if your opponent's black, that dodges all the black removal spells. Yeah, this is just nuts. It's a first pick in a weaker pack, I think, and in the first few picks for sure, it's going to be a huge pickup and a huge sign that white is open. I think Knight of Grace is just really, really, really good. It's like a straight B-. It's hard to give a card a B or a B+ when it's just a 2/2. But yeah, straight B- for Knight of Grace. Really happy with it. Up next is Knight of New Benalia. Knight of New Benalia is 1 and a white for a creature human knight at common. It's a 3/1. That's it. Just flavor text. It's a 3/1 for 2. Longtime viewers know that that's my favorite stats. I love 3/1s for 2 in white. They are aggressive on turn 2 and 3 and 4, and they trade up. They can trade with 3 drops and 4 drops and 5 drops, and sometimes even bigger. It's still nothing higher than a C. It is still just basically on filler level, as much as that hurts me to say, but it is just a C. Although in my heart, they're C+. C for Knight of New Benalia. Quende, Pride of Femerif is up next. Quende is 3 and a white for a legendary creature human knight at uncommon. It's a 2/2 with double strike, and creatures you control with first strike have double strike. So they get upgraded. It feels a little bit more commandery or brawly, I guess is the thing we should be saying now, than anything else. Remember Path of Metal? It's just not easy to pick up a keyword like that. It's just not easy to say, I'm the first strike deck, and get enough first strike creatures, because first strike creatures are highly valued by everybody playing this color. So you're not just going to load up on this. So realistically, it's a 4 mana 2/2 double strike, which is just something that I'm fine playing, but not usually over the moon, because it does die to a lot of stuff. It dies to a 2/3. C-, I'm just not super sold on it unless you're going really deep on first strikers, or if you needed a legendary creature, which will happen in this set, then it goes up a little bit. But C-, I don't think Quende is a super high pick. Yes, I will die to it having 7 enchantments on it. Up next is Lyra Dawnbringer. Lyra Dawnbringer is 3 white for a legendary creature angel at Mythic. She's a 5/5 with flying, first strike, and life link. Other angels you control get +1/+1 and have life link. We're talking about cards being out of jobs. Well, Sara Angel, you're out of a job. Nobody tells Sara Angel when we review her in like 6 cards. Yeah, this is just a slam dunk first pick because it's a 5/5 flying first strike lifelinker for 5. Like, you require 0 other angels for this to be an A+ first pick. This is the definition of a bomb. And if you do have angels, if you do have some Sara Angels or something, this is insane. This is a straight A+. It's a first pick. It must be dealt with. You are never, ever, ever, ever passing this card. A+ for Lyra Dawnbringer. Up next is Mesa Unicorn. Mesa Unicorn is 1 and a white for a creature unicorn at common. It's a 2/2 with lifelink. Yeah, just Grizzly Bears, go away. You're gone. Obsolete, deleted, delete, gone. At some point, this just has to be the new C. But for now, it will be a C+. It is a bear with an upside. For now, C+ for Mesa Unicorn. It's just fine. You'll play multiples if you have them. It's just fine. C+. Up next is On Sara's Wings. On Sara's Wings is 3 and a white for a legendary enchantment aura. So remember, you can only have one of these. At uncommon, enchant creature. Enchanted creature is legendary, gets +1/+1, and has flying, vigilance, and lifelink. 4 mana for all of this is okay. It is still an aura. I would tread carefully here, but the power is starting to get there. Again, it doesn't draw a card. It doesn't create a token. You are opening yourself up to getting 2 for 1. And we're starting to pay more and more mana for these auras. So I'm not super sold on it. I'm going to put it at a C. I think I will probably play the first one if I'm, relatively creature heavy and looking for a way to end the game kind of out of nowhere. But I am going to get 2 for 1 with this, and I'm going to lose a lot of mana investment. So just a C for On Sara's Wings. Pegasus Courser is up next. Pegasus Courser is 2 and a white for a creature, Pegasus, of course. At common, it's a 1/3 flying. Whenever Pegasus Courser attacks, another target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn. I feel like this ability has been done a lot, but my Gatherer searching must have been crappy because I only really found Eddytail, Hawk, and Chasm Drake. Anyways, I'm not sure where to fall on this one. Chasm Drake was great because it was a 3/3 flyer. It was just a good creature by itself. This is not a good creature by itself. Eddy Trail was fine because it was a 2-drop. This is a 3-drop and it's a 1/3, so that's pretty weak. The creature's just not that good on its own and would be a C- at absolute best. And you really want to be putting something beefy into the air. I don't think you're getting there if you're 2/2 with an upside because RIP Grizzly Bears. It still doesn't put it that much higher. I'm going to put it at like a C-level filler. And I don't know. The aggro decks want this because they want their creatures to fly. But the aggro decks also don't want a 1/3. So I don't know. I'm torn on it. I'm going to go with a C. I have a feeling it's going to drop a little bit lower than that, though. So C for Pegasus Courser. Up next is Sanctum Spirit. Sanctum Spirit is 3 and a white for a creature spirit at uncommon. It's a 3/2 with lifelink. Discard a historic card. Sanctum Spirit gains indestructible until end of turn. I kind of like the whole spirits getting indestructible thing because they're ghosts. How are you killing a ghost? Anyways, this is fine. It's not amazing without any sort of evasion on it, but a 3/2 lifelinker for 4 is something I'll play. It's a C+ at best, and I feel like even that's slightly overrating it, but a C feels too harsh. So we're going to go with a C+ on Sanctum Spirit. It's just fine. You'll play the first one, always. Might even play the second one. The discard thing doesn't really up the grade that much. It's just kind of a, oh, I can do this, and it's the right play. Yeah, sure, let's do it. It's not something that you're going to go deep on. Up next is Seal Away. Seal Away is 1 and a white for an enchantment at uncommon with flash. When Seal Away enters the battlefield, exile target tapped creature an opponent controls until Seal Away leaves the battlefield. This is great. This is insanely powerful. You're going to miss on things that you really want to hit, like Lyra Dawnbringer, because she has vigilance. But everything else has to turn sideways at some point. And then bam, instant speed, 2 mana O-Ring. Just completely sold. This is an easy first pick for me despite being slightly conditional removal. Very, very happy with it. A-. I think Seal Away is going to be a very, very good card. Up next is Sergeant at Arms. Sergeant at Arms is 2 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. It's a 2/3 with kicker 2 and a white. When Sergeant at Arms enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create 2/1 white soldier creature tokens. Meh. So the thing with kicked creatures is they're usually a little bit more expensive, and then their kicked ability hopefully makes up for that. This one just kind of misses on both sides. The non-kick version is a 2-3 for 3, which I'm not interested in. That's a C- at the absolute best, and realistically more like a D+. Kicked, it's still not that great. I get a 4-5 for 6. That's also not a card I would play. Yeah, Sergeant at Arms just seems real mediocre. It's a C-. It's the, oh crap, I need a creature kind of card. As long as you have anything better than this. And there are so many 2/2s with 2 for 2 with upside that you shouldn't have to play this card. So C- for Sergeant at Arms. Up next is Sara Angel. Completely, utterly obsolete by Lyra Dawnbringer. But I guess, hey, you can have 2 Sara Angels in play. Sara Angel is 3 white for a creature angel at uncommon. It's a 4/4 flying vigilance. Yeah, this is what a bomb used to look like. And it actually is still really, really good. Do you remember Air Elemental in Ixalan? It was pretty darn good, wasn't it? How about you give it vigilance for no extra cost? Yeah, this is just a stone cold classical bomb. It's going to end the game pretty quickly. It demands an answer, and it's fairly first pickable in a number of packs. It's not going over, a modern style bomb that basically says I win the game on it, and it's not going over the most premium removal, but it's going immediately after that. Sara Angel is just a solid B+. This is what bomby cards used to look like, and it still is kind of bomby. Up next is Sara Disciple. Sara Disciple is 1 and a white for a creature Baird cleric at common. It's a 1/1 flying first strike. Whenever you cast a historic spell, Sara Disciple gets +1/+1 until end of turn. No. 1/1 flyers for 2 need to be really, really, really good, and this isn't really, 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 really good. On some turns, it becomes fine. And that's about the best I can say about it. It's a C-, it's filler. I'm going to cut it as often as I possibly can. C- for Sara Disciple. Up next is Shalai, Voice of Plenty. Shalai is 3 and a white for a legendary creature angel at rare. She's a 3/4 flying. You, planeswalkers you control, and other creatures you control have hexproof. Also, for 4 green, so she's basically multicolored, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Each creature you control. I just knocked stuff off my desk. I was so happy saying that. Yeah, Shalai looks really, really, really good. At least it's rare, because hexproof to the entire team is going to be obnoxious, but at least she can be targeted. This is a very real first pick. Even as a 3/4 flyer for 4, it's fine, and it's probably strong enough to just first pick it and head on into white-green. I think this is just shy of the premium removal. It's kind of at like the Sara Angel level. It gets worse if you're mono white, and by worse I mean it becomes like a B. But if you are in white-green, this is like a A-, I think. Shalai just looks really, really good. The fail case of being a 3/4 flyer for 4 and giving everything you have hexproof is really good. A- for Shalai, Voice of Plenty. Up next is Tashar, an Ancestor's Apostle. Tashar, Ancestor's Apostle, which looks a lot like an angel, especially right beside Shalai, is not an angel. It's a 3 and a white legendary creature Baird cleric at rare. It's a 2/2 flyer, and whenever you cast a historic spell, return target creature card with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is a very solid white weenie include, because you're going to attack with your little 1, 2, 3 drops. They're going to die, and then you drop a legendary or an artifact or whatever, and suddenly you get them back. And I'm going to have the toughest time remembering that all artifacts are historic. Because, Joyra, Teferi, etc., those feel historic. But somebody's random sword or a Power Stone shard doesn't really feel historic, but they are. Anyways, this is very built around though, so you unfortunately don't need to take it super highly, because you could just whiff on it. You could just end up with not many historic spells and have a 2/2 flyer for 4. And that's not the best, but you can first pick it and build around it. So I think it's a very solid card. I think it's like a B. I was going to go B- there. I think it is just a straight B. You can first pick it, build around it. If you just have no historic spells, which I don't think is really going to be possible in this, then this doesn't go any higher. But if you are deep on it, and especially if you're white weenie, if you have a lot of things that you can potentially return, then I think it's going to be pretty decent. So B for Tashar, Ancestor's Apostle. Up next is Tragic Poet. Tragic Poet is a single white mana for a creature human at common. It's a 1/1. Tap and sacrifice it. Return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. No thanks. I'm not playing a 1/1 for one that maybe someday I get to kill in return for an enchantment. If I have an insane saga, maybe? But yeah, this just feels like a waste of a card slot. I'm keeping it a D-. I think it's literally only playable if you have like some sort of insane bomb saga or some sort of world enchantment or something like that. Yeah, D- for Tragic Poet. Up next, our second last card is Triumph of Gerard. Triumph of Gerard is 1 and a white for an uncommon enchantment saga. Act 1 and Act 2 put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control with the greatest power. Act 3, target creature you control with the greatest power, probably the one you put counters on, gains flying, first strike, and lifelink until end of turn. So, this kind of has everything I want to talk about sagas on. Act 1 and Act 2, it puts a very permanent thing down. It puts counters on a creature. That's great. Act 3 is a flash in the pan, one turn thing that your opponent knows is coming. But flying first strike lifelink on the most powerful creature, which is probably a creature that has 2 +1/+1 counters on it, is going to be maybe a little bit hard to disrupt. But if they disrupt it, if they bounce that creature, that's 3 turns worth of this saga just kind of wasted. Now, luckily, the saga is only 2 mana. And that, I think, makes this saga just flat out solid. And that's something that I want to make sure that I address, because I can see the comments already. I don't think the sagas are bad. I, in fact, think most of them are good. I'm just iffy about thinking they're always going to go off and thinking that Act 3 is going to just hit the way you want it to, because you're telegraphing to your opponent that it's going to happen. But yeah, Triumph Gerard looks really, really good. Your opponent's going to require removal or bounce or something for that Act 3, and that Act 3 is going to be pretty darn big. All in all, I think Triumph of Gerard is a very good pickup. I don't think it's first pick quality, but I think it's pretty high mid-pack. I would kind of value this almost like Ordeal of Heliod, I guess, in that it's a real good early pick, but not quite first. So let's go B- on it. Finally, our last card for today is Urza's Ruinous Blast. Urza's Ruinous Blast is 4 and a white for a legendary sorcery at rare, and legendary sorcery does not mean remotely what you think it means. It doesn't mean that you can only have one, doesn't mean that you can only cast one during the game. What it means is that you can only cast it if you have a legendary creature or planeswalker on the battlefield. Very strange. But, luckily there's a lot of legendary creatures kicking around. We reviewed 7 today, plus an enchantment that makes something legendary. So it's not going to be out of the realm of possibility. And in fact, it's going to be relatively normal to have a legendary creature. But you do have to have it down to even cast this spell. What does it do? Exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. So it's sort of a board wrath, but a board wipe that you have no real control over what's going to happen. You're going to have at least one creature left, because you have to have one in order to cast this, I guess. But you have no idea in the average matchup what your opponent's going to have left. They may have nothing left. They may have an entire board left. And that is just way too variable for me. I do not want a board wrath that says destroy between 0 and 7 of your opponent's permanents. Well, actually, I do. Let's say creatures. Yeah, this is not a wrath that I'm happy about. I'm not a big fan of wraths in limited anyways, but this one I'm just really not happy about. So I'm at a D+ on this. If you're real deep on legendary permanents, maybe it goes up a little bit. If you know that you're going to have a bunch of creatures left behind on average, sure, it goes up a little bit, but I'm real hesitant on this. I'm going to start at a D+ for Urza's Ruinous Blast. So that's going to wrap it up for the white set review. This set looks amazing. There's mana sinks, there's kicker, there's cool stuff going on. It looks like you maybe can block. Super excited for Dominaria. I'm going to draft the heck out of this, going to produce a ton of content, going to stream a ton. Hope you guys are looking forward to it too. Let me know what you think of these cards here. What white cards are you most looking forward to? That is easily Lyra Dawnbringer for me. She looks so good. But yeah, real excited for this. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at the Mana League. That's Leek, like the vegetable, not the card. You can also find me at facebook.com/the League, twitch.tv/the League, and patreon.com/the League. If you like the content, click that thumbs up button. Click subscribe if you want to see more. If you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow for the Blue Set Review.